Welcome back. Find a comfortable position and let your body get heavy. Take a slow breath in and let it out. There's nothing you need to do right now. Know where you need to be. Tonight I have 12 stories for you. Let them wash over you. You don't need to follow along closely, just let the words carry you. Let's begin. It was one of those slow, rainy afternoons, the kind that drape the world in soft gray and coax the colors out of everything. I found myself in our small kitchen, the warm, inviting scent of cinnamon and nutmeg curling up from the oven, where a batch of apple muffins was baking. The faint sound of raindrops pattered against the window, creating a gentle rhythm that wrapped around me like a soft blanket. A small pot of tea, still steaming, rested on the counter, mingling with the fragrance of baked apples and spices. Outside, the garden looked vibrant despite the gloom. Droplets clinging to the leaves, shining like tiny jewels caught in the embrace of a moment. As I measured out the flour, letting it spill softly into the mixing bowl, I could hear the light creaks of the house settling around me. I glanced toward the living room where the old recliner rested, a place that held countless stories and lazy afternoons. My cat, Oliver, was cozily nestled in the deep cushion, his slow, rhythmic purring harmonizing with the rain. The world outside felt distant, almost muted, and for just that moment, everything felt perfectly balanced, almost serene. Not too many days ago, the atmosphere had shifted slightly. It all began with a small disagreement with my neighbor, Mrs. Pattersby, who prided herself on her immaculate garden. She had an affinity for bright, blooming flowers, which she tended to with a fierce dedication. It was impressive, really, the way her yard seemed to burst with color, while mine was more of a relaxed blend of wildflowers and the occasional patch of daisies, tumbling over the edges of the beds just as I liked them to. So when I found her glaring at my slightly unruly yard during one of our infrequent chats over the garden fence, her comment about my lack of gardening skills caught me off guard. I don't generally let comments like that bother me, but still, a subtle irritation lingered. As the muffins rose in the oven and the kitchen filled with warmth, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself at how trivial it all seemed in the grand scope of life. But the more I thought about what she'd said, the more I felt that familiar ember of mischief flickering inside me. Perhaps I could engage in a small act of harmless revenge. Nothing that hurt, just a light-hearted nudge to balance the scales. That evening, I decided to take a stroll around the neighborhood. The rain had stopped, and the world felt fresh and inviting, the air crisp with the smell of damp earth. I could hear laughter nearby as kids splashed in puddles, their joy filling the space with a lively spirit. The sky lightened slightly, revealing hints of blue, and I took a moment to inhale deeply, feeling the tension of the day slide away. I meandered by Mrs. Pattersby's house, noticing the immaculate rows of petunias and marigolds, perfectly trimmed hedges, and just so very neat. I smiled, imagining how it must feel to have everything in its perfect place, and I felt a soft chuckle bubble inside me at the thought of my own garden, blissfully chaotic. A whimsical idea sparked, and I decided to visit the local gardening store the next day. Early the next morning, with the sun shining brightly and everything glistening after the rain, I visited the small store. A delightful little place bustling with life. The shelves were filled with plants, colorful pots, and gardening tools that seemed to sing as they caught the light. I wandered through the aisles, letting textures and colors wash over me when I stumbled upon a lovely selection of vibrant garden gnomes. There they sat, with cheeky smiles and quirky expressions, ready to add a bit of whimsy to any garden. I knew then what I had to do. I carefully selected a gnome with a rather exaggerated expression, one that looked like it was caught mid-laugh. It was painted in brilliant colors, with bright red pants and a blue shirt, a charming little fellow that seemed to radiate joy. As I paid for him, I felt an undeniable sense of excitement flutter in my chest. It was harmless fun, really, a little nudge in the neighborly dynamic. That evening, while Mrs. Pattersby was busy tending to her prized roses, I snuck into my garden just as twilight unfurled. With great care, I set the gnome in a prime spot, right at the edge of my flower bed, in plain sight, but with a bit of playful mischief. He stood there, smiling serenely as if he were inviting the world to partake in the fun. I couldn't help but giggle at the thought of her discovering him, and I felt myself relaxed, as if the act itself was a release. The next morning was bright and clear, the sun spilling across the landscape, glittering with dew. As I sipped my coffee on the porch, I noticed Mrs. Pattersby doing her usual morning rounds. When her eyes landed on the gnome, her brows knitted together, and she paused. I could see the flicker of surprise followed by a slow smile breaking out across her face. As she approached the fence, I watched her shake her head in bemusement, the lines of her usual stern expression softening. "Have you seen this?" she called out, laughter lacing her words. "Did you really put a gnome in your garden?" I couldn't help but smile back. "Just trying to add a bit of character," I replied, my voice steady and light. She shared a chuckle, and for the first time in a while, the atmosphere between us shifted, softened, if only just a little. The gnome had somehow turned a quiet rivalry into a shared amusement. Days passed, and I began to notice a change. Mrs. Pattersby's once stoic demeanor gradually melted into a lighter presence. She'd sometimes stop by to admire my growing garden, and I'd respond with gentle jests about her perfect flowers needing a little whimsical touch of their own. In turn, she'd often share new gardening tips, and we even found common ground in our love for the local farmer's market. At one point, I decided to surprise her with a matching gnome for her garden, adorned with a bright yellow sun hat. I placed it carefully among her blooms, knowing she would find it the next morning. When she did, her laughter rang out across the yard, a sound that felt like a gentle breeze whispering through the trees. As time went by, our gardens became a canvas of smiles and laughter. Other neighbors began to take notice, and suddenly, the street felt more vibrant and alive, with gnomes appearing in various gardens, each one gleefully tucked among the flowers as if they were all in on the joke. It was as if we had woven a tapestry from something trivial, creating a connection between us that felt delightful and light. Eventually, on another rainy afternoon, much like the one when I had begun this little adventure, I found myself once again in my warm kitchen. The comforting smell of baked goods filled the air while raindrops danced against the window. Oliver was curled up on the chair, content in his sleepy dreams. I took a moment to appreciate how something as simple as a laughter-filled gnome could blossom into a lovely friendship. A soft reminder that even the smallest actions can shift our perspectives, connecting us beautifully in our shared experiences. In that moment, I felt gratitude wrap around me like a warm embrace. The rain outside was steady, and I found it soothing, a perfect backdrop for this calm, cozy life I had nurtured. I allowed myself to sink comfortably into this warm memory, the world outside gently muted by the rain, knowing that everything was perfectly all right, just as it was. With the dim light of the kitchen creating a soft glow, I lingered in that peaceful stillness, allowing my eyes to drift closed and my thoughts to fade like the raindrops on the window. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. The evening was settling in with a soft, golden glow, the kind that brushed over everything with a gentle hand. I remember the faint sound of the kettle humming its quiet tune as I stood in the kitchen, the smell of chamomile drifting through the air, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. The light from the old brass fixture swung slightly, casting playful shadows on the faded yellow wallpaper, which had seen better days but still held a charm that felt like home. Outside, the trees swayed just a bit, their leaves whispering secrets to one another in the light breeze that slipped through the slightly cracked window. I had the 3 simple ingredients ready on the counter: a delicate teacup with dainty flowers etched onto it, a tea bag of chamomile, and a small pot of honey. These small rituals grounded me, helped center my thoughts after a long day, one that had presented me with a choice that had lingered heavily on my heart. As the kettle clicked off, I poured the scalding water over the tea bag, watching the golden liquid bloom and swirl. I stirred in a spoonful of honey, the sweetness dissolving into the warmth like whispers of kindness. After placing the steaming cup on the table, I noticed the soft glow of the sunset outside, casting a rosy tint across the sky. I took a moment to breathe in deeply, feeling the air fill my lungs, embracing the space around me. It was quiet, almost reverent, punctuated only by the faint laughter of children playing in the distance, their joyful sounds echoing the carefree spirit of the world outside. This wasn't the first time I had felt this stillness. I often found comfort here, in these fleeting moments. But on this evening, I could feel the weight of my earlier decision resting on my shoulders, pressing gently yet persistently. I had finally chosen to resign from a job that had once excited me, but had begun to drain my spirit. It hadn't been an easy choice, and yet, as I savored the sweet, floral aroma wafting from my cup, there was a flicker of relief mingling with my anxiety. It was a step into the unknown, yes, but with every passing second, the uncertainty was less intimidating. I smiled softly to myself, remembering how the thought of change used to frighten me, how I often wished for things to remain as they were, safe and familiar. As I settled into the chair at the table, I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. The heat felt soothing against my skin. Outside, the leaves rustled softly, and I could hear a distant dog barking, quick bursts of sound punctuating the tranquility of the moment. The sky deepened gradually, shades of purples and blues mingling together like a watercolor painting. I sipped my tea slowly, letting the warmth coax a smile onto my lips, a tiny testament to my growing acceptance. The transition from one chapter of my life to another had felt daunting. I remembered the conversations with friends, their well-meaning advice echoing in my ears. Some had urged caution and hesitation, while others championed bravery in pursuing what truly resonated with my heart. Each piece of advice felt like a stone added to the scale that balanced my decision in the quiet, delicate dance of my thoughts. I thought of Eliza, my closest friend, her voice steady as she reassured me during one of our long calls. "Sometimes, you need to let go of the good to make room for the great," she had said, the words resonating with me like a bell ringing in a silent room. And although I had questioned the validity of those words at the time, I found they echoed in my mind as I let the warmth of the tea wash over me. From the dim corner of the room, the soft ticking of the clock blended with the sound of my thoughts. Each tick marked the passing seconds in a way that felt comforting. I focused on the small things, like an impending calmness settling over me, the way the steam curled lazily from my cup, and the distant calls of night creatures beginning their symphony outside. The memories of my last day at work flickered through my mind, a bittersweet montage of laughter and shared moments. I remembered lingering in the break room, saying goodbye to familiar faces, the weight of their kind words wrapping around me like a warm shawl. "You'll find your way," they said, smiles lingering long after the fond memories had been shared. And while I carried a touch of sadness for what I was leaving behind, I felt whispers of hope fluttering in my heart, a chance to explore what might lie ahead. As I finished the last sips of my tea, I allowed myself to breathe in the comforting scent of chamomile, reminding me of tranquility and peace. The gentle bustle of the evening outside continued, and I found solace in each small sound. It felt as if the world was holding its breath alongside me, preparing for the eventuality of the night, where all things would settle and find their place. The sun dipped lower, and the sky deepened into a rich indigo, twinkling lights beginning to peek through the horizon. I felt a yawn escape my lips, a gentle reminder of the day's fatigue. As I rose to place my empty cup in the sink, I noticed my reflection in the window, the soft glow of the kitchen light outlining my silhouette. Against the backdrop of twilight, I could smile at the person staring back at me, recognizing an unfamiliar strength blooming within. With the dishes washed and the kitchen now quiet for the evening, I padded softly to my small reading nook, a cozy spot draped in soft blankets and cushions. I settled down, wrapping the weight of the blankets around me as if they were a gentle hug. and I took a moment to let my thoughts drift as softly as the stars began to twinkle outside. With each breath, I felt lighter, like a feather caught in a gentle breeze, as I allowed myself to embrace the stillness around me. The decision I had made was like the last leaf, finally letting go, swirling down from a tree in the crisp autumn air, dancing in a carefree manner before it landed softly on the ground. And as the sky darkened further, the world outside began to quiet. The laughter of children replaced by the chatter of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. My eyelids grew heavy, and I let them fall, surrendering to the peacefulness that enveloped me. In that moment of calm, I felt grateful for the journey ahead, the unknowns that awaited me, and the time to simply be. In the stillness, I allowed myself to float gently into a quiet slumber, the world dimming around me as I drifted off into the soft embrace of night, grateful for the moments that led me here. And now, our next story. I settled into the soft embrace of the worn-out armchair in the corner of my kitchen, the air heavy with the buttery scent of freshly baked biscuits. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon, and the gentle rhythm of raindrops against the window created a soothing soundtrack to the quiet hum of my thoughts. The walls of the kitchen glowed warmly from the soft light of a single hanging lamp, illuminating the few family photos that dotted the room. Each picture told a story, moments captured in time, smiling faces at birthday parties, snapshots from vacations, and even the curly-haired child clumsily frosting a birthday cake that had tipped slightly to one side, making everyone sigh. Laugh. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, droplets glistening on their leaves, while the world seemed to wrap itself in a cozy blanket beneath the steady murmur of the rain. The kettle whistled softly, and I rose to pour myself a cup of chamomile tea, feeling the warm steam caress my face. I took a moment to savor the warmth that spread through my fingers as I cradled the cup, the smooth ceramic cool against the steam's heat. It felt like holding a piece of comfort in my palm, and I took a deep breath, allowing the calming aroma to envelop me. Sipping my tea, I glanced around the kitchen, my eyes landing on the small wooden table where a stack of old letters lay waiting. They were yellowed at the edges, a bit crumpled, as if they had been handled countless times, their contents written in a different lifetime. I remembered how I'd stumbled upon them just yesterday, tucked away in an unused drawer, each one a gentle echo of a time when my family had come together without the rifts that had grown over the years. The letters were from my brother, Jamie, letters filled with laughter, shared dreams, and the sometimes clumsy attempts to connect, even when life pulled us apart. Jamie and I had grown distant after an argument that had spiraled out of control, an all too familiar tale I was sure many families could recount. But as I sat there enveloped in the cozy warmth of the room, I felt a small flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps it was time to reach out, to try to mend what had been frayed. The rhythm of the rain continued to tap softly against the window as I poured myself a second cup of tea, my decision settling like a gentle weight in my heart. I picked up my phone, noting the slight tremble in my hand as I scrolled through to find Jamie's number. The screen glowed back at me like a small lantern in the dim room. I hesitated for a moment, memories cascading through my mind like leaves falling from a tree in autumn. The laughter we once shared, the secretive whispers as children beneath the blanket forts we built. I inhaled deeply, steeling myself for what could unfold. The call went through and rang for a while before his voice came through the line, a bit surprised, as if he'd been pulled from a dream. "Hey, it's been a while," he said, a hint of uncertainty lacing his tone. Yet there was warmth there, too. "It has," I replied, feeling my own heart race as I stirred my tea absent-mindedly. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our childhood. You remember those summer nights? When we'd sneak out to catch fireflies. Now, enjoying." Jamie chuckled softly, the sound like a balm to the worry swirling in my chest. "How could I forget? You always insisted on catching the biggest ones, even if they were the hardest to find. Now, I smiled to myself, the memory curling around me like a familiar embrace. We spent the next few moments reminiscing about those small adventures, the laughter echoing between us as if the years of silence had melted away under the warmth of shared memories. We carefully navigated the corners of our past, sometimes tiptoeing around the arguments, sometimes leaning into how they had shaped us, both as individuals and as siblings. There was a pause, a moment where silence filled the air, hanging between us like a suspended breath. I could almost envision Jamie on the other end of the line, perhaps leaning against the wall, the soft light of his living room casting gentle shadows across his face. I took a breath, my fingers tapping lightly against the coffee table, wishing to reach beyond the screen, to close the space that had grown between us. I know we've had our differences, I began, my voice softer now. But I miss you. I miss us. The honesty flowed from my heart, and I felt lighter, as though letting go of a weight I had been carrying for far too long. A long moment stretched out before him. I miss us too, he finally said, his voice steady but quiet. I wanted to reach out, but it was complicated. Now, Estelle. I understand, I replied, letting the soft rhythm of the rain outside wash over me as I listened to his words. Maybe we can start small. Would you be open to meeting next week? Just to catch up? No. There was a softness in the way Jamie laughed. Small's my specialty. How about that little cafe by the park? You remember the one with the mismatched chairs? No, Nia. My heart warmed, a smile spreading across my face. Of course. I always loved that place. No. We agreed on a day, laughter bubbling up between our words as we made plans for our reunion. As I hung up the call, I felt a lightness in my chest, a ripple of warmth unfurling inside me like the first rays of sunlight after a long winter. The rain continued to dance against the window, a gentle backdrop to the quiet joy blossoming in my heart. Over the next few days, the anticipation grew like flowers unfurling in spring, each moment filled with a sense of renewal. I found myself humming as I baked more biscuits, the sweet smell radiating through the kitchen, infusing the air with warmth and comfort. I hoped he would like them. I remembered how he had always been the one to sneak extra cookies when our mother wasn't watching. The day of our meeting arrived, and the sky was a brilliant canvas of blues and whites. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my collar, feeling a flutter of nerves mixed with excitement. The cafe buzzed with familiar sounds, the chime of the bell above the door, the comforting whir of the coffee machine, and snippets of laughter lingering in the air like soft music. When I entered, Jamie was already seated at a small table by the window, his familiar silhouette framed against the sunlight pouring in. He looked a bit older, perhaps a little more worn, but there was a kindness in his eyes that reminded me of our childhood. As our eyes met, I felt a rush of emotion, an overwhelming sense of gratitude that we had both made it here, to this moment. Hey, he said softly, a smile breaking across his face, making him look younger in an instant. We exchanged a warm hug, and I felt the years of distance slip away like a gentle breeze. We settled into our conversation, the small details of life pouring forth as easily as the coffee that filled our mugs. We spoke of our jobs, our friends, and even our tentative hopes for the future. I noticed the way his hands moved expressively, how his laughter bubbled up freely, washing away the remnants of past misunderstandings. Each shared story layered our connection anew, knitting together the fabric of our siblinghood. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue against the cafe walls, we began to tread into deeper waters, the years that had slipped away, and the lost time we both longed to reclaim. It felt surreal, how simple it was to reconnect, how the laughter bubbled up more easily than I could have ever expected. I know we've made mistakes, he admitted quietly, a thoughtful look crossing his face. But I've missed the way we used to talk about everything. I nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle into the space between us. Me too. I think I was stubborn when I should have reached out. Now, just a comfortable silence enveloped us, the cafe around us fading into a gentle hum as we both absorbed the moment, allowing the vulnerability to linger in the air. It was a reminder that we were in this together, still learning, still growing. As we left the cafe, I felt the soft warmth of the evening breeze surrounding us, mingled with the scent of blooming flowers in the park nearby. The world felt larger somehow, more vibrant, as if the colors had sharpened in the light of our reconnection. We walked side by side, talking effortlessly, sharing stories like children once more, piecing together the laughter and friendship that had been lost and now found. The clouds shifted, casting soft shadows across the ground, the sky painted in shades of rose and violet as the day bid us good night. We paused at the park entrance, the playground where we had spent countless summers echoing back to us. Jamie looked at me, his eyes shining with that familiar spark, and I knew we had stepped onto a path that led home, back to each other. As I settled into my warm armchair later that evening, the rain began to fall again, in a gentle serenade. I wrapped a soft blanket around my shoulders, cradling a fresh cup of tea, brewed just for this moment. The memories of the day flooded through me, warm and sweet like the scent of the biscuits I had baked earlier. I closed my eyes, feeling gratitude wash over me, knowing that the gentle bond of family had been rekindled. The rain danced against my window, and I felt the comforting embrace of stillness wrap around me. The world outside faded softly into a comforting hush, a place of quiet resolution. As I sank deeper into the moment, I let myself drift, the peace of family connection settling in my heart. I welcomed sleep, the gentle rhythm of the rain guiding me into dreams filled with warmth, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. Let yourself relax as we begin the next story. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the office was wrapped in the warm embrace of early spring sunshine filtering through the tall windows. I can still vividly recall the gentle scent of freshly brewed coffee, mingling with the faint aroma of blooming jasmine, wafting in from the small courtyard outside. The glow of the sun cast soft shadows across our long wooden table, where my coworkers and I had gathered for our weekly team meeting. The quiet hum of the air conditioning felt like a soft lullaby, creating a calm atmosphere amid the chatter of our conversations. I sat at my usual spot, feeling the smooth grain of the table beneath my fingertips, glancing up occasionally as my colleagues settled into their chairs. Lucy, always energetic, was already organizing her notes, her laughter bright against the muted backdrop of people preparing for the meeting. I remember how she absent-mindedly tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her focus shifting back to the screen as our manager, Tom, began to outline the agenda for the week. It was just another routine meeting, but even in that simplicity, I felt a sense of comfort. The fluorescent lights above flickered softly, and the sound of distant typing created a familiar rhythm as we worked together in our little corner of the world. I could hear the faint rustle of papers, punctuated by the soft clink of mugs being set down. It was in those small moments that I found peace, a sense of belonging that stretched beyond the work we did. As the meeting progressed, however, I noticed a subtle tension in the air. A slight frown on Tom's face when he glanced at the report I had submitted, and Lucy shooting quick looks in my direction, her brow furrowed as if she were gauging a response from me. A mild unease crept in, the kind that causes a quiet ripple in an otherwise calm pond. I tried to brush it aside, focusing instead on the pleasant sunlight spilling through the window, casting soft patterns on the carpet. During a lull in the discussion, I began to worry about an email I had sent only a few days earlier. It had felt harmless at the time, a simple suggestion regarding some changes to our project timeline. But what if Tom took it the wrong way? What if it seemed unprofessional? I chastised myself for worrying so much, but the thought lingered, like a tiny pebble in my shoe, just enough to cause discomfort. When the meeting finally wrapped up and everyone dispersed to their respective tasks, I lingered, feeling the comfort of the warm sun on my back as I organized my notes. Lucy approached me, her footsteps quiet on the carpet, tinged with hesitance. "Hey, she said, a soft smile breaking through. Are you okay? You seem a little off, I offered before she could finish her thought. I let out a small laugh, more to ease my own nerves than to reassure her. Yeah, I'm fine. Just overthinking things. No. She leaned against the edge of the table, her arms crossing lightly over her chest. I sometimes do that too. You know, worry about what people think. It can get in the way of our work. None. Right? I chuckled. Like I'm suddenly in some high-stakes drama instead of just trying to meet a project deadline. The lightheartedness in my tone felt like a small step towards relieving the weight of my unease. Lucy smiled knowingly, the corners of her eyes crinkling slightly. You're not alone. Tom gets stressed too. He just hides it behind that serious facade. But really, we all need to remember that we're a team. We're just trying to support each other in our work, right? No. Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, calming the furrow in my brow. It was comforting to know I wasn't the only one wrestling with second thoughts. Yeah, I nodded, feeling the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. I guess sometimes I forget that we're all just trying to figure it out. Exactly, she replied. The sunlight catching her hair as she spoke made her seem almost ethereal, and for a moment I let myself get lost in the comfort of that connection. A shared understanding, like two friends trading secrets on a warm summer evening. As we chatted, I felt the day begin to wind down. The sunlight shifted, casting a golden hue across the office. The sounds of typing and low conversation faded into a gentle background hum, and I could feel the warmth of camaraderie settling over us. Lucy shared an amusing anecdote from her weekend, and as she did, the room filled with laughter, dissolving the last shreds of my lingering worry. I glanced around at the familiar faces of my colleagues, each immersed in their own world, but connected through these small moments that made our workplace feel more like home. It was easy to slip into the rhythm of our days, the shared coffee breaks, the quiet camaraderie as we supported each other through challenges, the jokes and shared laughs that made the long hours more bearable. After a while, Lucy glanced at her watch and sighed. I should get going. Got to tackle that report for Tom. But hey, don't let these worries consume you, okay? We all have each other's backs. When done. As she walked away, her words lingered in the air like a gentle breeze. I took a deep breath, feeling an unexpected lightness settle within. I realized that all my worries about the email and the meeting had been just a storm in a teacup. I was part of a team, and that meant we were in this together. Slowly, I packed up my things and made my way to the door, savoring the warm glow of the fading sunlight that filled the office. The chatter around me softened, and the hum of the air conditioner felt soothing against the growing quiet. As I stepped outside, the world felt expansive and welcoming. The calming sounds of the courtyard filled my ears. The distant laughter of colleagues, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, and the last notes of bird songs as they settled down for the evening. I paused for a moment, breathing in the fresh air, letting the warmth of the sun envelop me like a soft embrace. The soft wind whispered secrets of the day, reminding me that tomorrow would bring new opportunities and challenges. But for now, it was enough to let the moment breathe. I felt grateful for the connections I had with my coworkers, for the understanding and support that bound us together. As I made my way home, the streetlights began to flicker on, casting a soft, golden glow on the sidewalk. I could hear the faint sound of laughter from a nearby cafe, the clinking of glasses, and the distant hum of a city winding down after a long day. It was a gentle reminder that life continued on, with its small, beautiful moments intertwined. Once I arrived home, I kicked off my shoes and settled into the familiar warmth of my living space, the soft cushions of the couch inviting me to sink in. I took a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the day's worries drift away like clouds in the sky. There was a sweet stillness that enveloped the room as I wrapped myself in a cozy throw blanket, allowing the warmth to seep into my bones. In the quiet of my home, with the soft golden light of the lamp casting a gentle glow, I felt at peace. The world outside was slowly quieting, and inside, I was cocooned in gratitude. As I closed my eyes, I listened to the comforting sounds of the evening, the soft rustle of leaves, the occasional distant laughter, and the gentle sighs of the world settling in for the night. And with that, I surrendered to the calm, letting the warmth of the day linger in my thoughts as sleep began to embrace me like the softest of blankets. I found myself drifting away, knowing that tomorrow, like today, would bring its own unique moments, swirling together into the beautiful tapestry of life. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. The sun had just begun to dip beyond the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the small town where I live. It was one of those evenings when everything seemed to slow down, a soft, lingering warmth in the air, the faint buzz of crickets beginning their nightly serenade. I was tucked in the snug pocket of my kitchen, the familiar scent of vanilla and freshly brewed chamomile tea wrapping around me like a cozy shawl. The kettle had been whistling gently, and I poured the steaming liquid into my favorite chipped mug, watching as wisps of steam curled upward in delicate dances. The kitchen was small and filled with the comforting clutter of a well-loved space. Handwritten recipes hung on the wall. A magnetic collection of old postcards adorned the refrigerator, and the faded yellow curtains swayed ever so slightly in the breeze from the open window, which welcomed cool, fragrant air from the open window. Garden, outside. Little pots of rosemary and mint sat by the sill, their earthy scents mingling with the floral tea, creating a blend that felt timeless and serene. It was the perfect place to unwind after a long day. I had spent much of the afternoon working on a series of sketches, a quiet hobby I cherished. As an introvert, my evenings were often filled with soft shadows and the gentle sound of pencil on paper. I lost myself in details, the strokes of my pencil capturing the world around me. It was in those moments that I felt most at peace, the calmness settling over me like a blanket. Drawing had become my sanctuary, an intimate conversation with my thoughts, where I could express what words often failed to convey. This particular evening, however, felt different. There was a soft anticipation hanging in the air, as if the world outside my window knew something I didn't. My mind flickered back to a recent encounter, a chance meeting with a fellow artist named Evan. We had bumped into each other at a local art fair just a few weeks prior, both silently observing the vibrant chaos of color and creativity that surrounded us. I remembered our shared glances, the shy smiles exchanged from across crowded booths. He had a quiet warmth about him, a gentle humor that seemed to shine through his careful observations of the world. Evan was an introvert like me, and our conversation had flowed effortlessly as we meandered through the fair, both of us navigating the small talk in our own muted way. Our words felt like soft brushstrokes against a canvas, delicate and deliberate, an easy rhythm forged from shared understanding. As we talked about our favorite artists, our voices barely rose above the ambient chatter. I was surprised at how effortlessly we connected, a spark that felt subtle yet profound. In my memory, I could still see him standing there, laughter dancing in his eyes as he quipped about the chaotic nature of the creative process, comparing it to a wild garden. "You never know what will pop up when you least expect it," he had said, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. It was a moment I replayed time and time again, a gentle reminder of how beautifully unexpected life could be. Determined to keep that connection alive, I had invited him for tea. It was a simple gesture, one rooted in the comfort of shared moments rather than flashy displays of grandeur. We agreed on Wednesday, a small, non-committal plan that felt like a tentative brushstroke on a blank canvas. I had spent hours preparing for our meeting, clearing the clutter from my living space, ensuring the atmosphere would feel inviting yet unpretentious. As I sipped the warm chamomile, I felt a flicker of anxiety fluttering in my chest. What if our conversation didn't flow like it had before? What if the awkwardness of real-life interaction disrupted the calm I had felt that day at the fair? Yet, I tried to shake off the worries, reminding myself that this was simply two people enjoying a cup of tea, weaving thoughts into a tapestry of connection. The clock ticked softly in the background, and the sun sank lower, casting long shadows in the kitchen. I closed my eyes for a moment, envisioning the evening ahead. I imagined Evan stepping through the door, the soft jingle of his keys as he entered, a tentative smile on his face. I wondered what he would wear, what stories he might bring with him. Most of all, I hoped I wouldn't fumble over my words. Time passed unhurriedly, and soon enough, I found myself arranging a small selection of biscuits on a plate, still warm from the oven. The inviting aroma of chocolate chip cookies filled the air, mingling delightfully with the scent of the tea. The world outside was fading into a deep blue and purple, a soft gradient that felt almost like a painting itself. When the doorbell rang, it startled me from my reverie. My heart raced, and I took a moment to steady my breath before crossing the room. As I opened the door, there he stood, a little shyly, with a warmth in his gaze that made my heart flutter. Evan looked just as I remembered, casual, comfortable, with a faint hint of mischief in his smile. "I hope I'm not too early," he said softly, his voice a calm melody. I ushered him inside, the cozy atmosphere embracing us both. The light from the kitchen cast a gentle golden hue around us, and I could feel the atmosphere shift ever so slightly as he stepped over the threshold. We shared light banter, the kind that felt like warm blankets wrapped around us, as I poured him a cup of tea and offered a biscuit. He accepted with a small chuckle, his fingers brushing mine as he took the plate, sending a little ripple of warmth through me. We settled into my small, comfortable living room filled with the soft colors of the twilight that filtered through the old curtains. It was a modest space, filled with the art I had created over the years, a blend of doodles, sketches, and half-finished pieces that told stories of their own. I felt a sense of pride sharing my space with him, showing him the world I often kept concealed. As the evening unfolded, our conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by laughter and the occasional pause that felt more like a shared breath than silence. We spoke about art and life, about dreams and fears, and the way we navigated the world as introverts. It felt like we were weaving a delicate tapestry of our thoughts and experiences together, each thread creating a deeper connection. Evan spoke about his own art, a fascination with the interplay of light and shadow, how it inspired him to explore the subtleties of life. His eyes sparkled with passion, and I couldn't help but smile, enchanted by the way his words painted vivid pictures in my mind. I found myself leaning in, hanging on to each delicate thread he offered, as if they were strands of gold. As the night deepened, the comforting presence of tea and cookies gave way to a sense of tranquility. I watched through the window as the stars began to emerge, dotting the darkening sky with tiny points of light, as if they were twinkling in approval of the evening. There was a gentle lull in the conversation, a feeling of ease that enveloped us both. At one moment, while Evan was gesturing passionately about a particular artist, his hand brushed against the edge of my sketchbook resting on the table. Curiosity flickered across his features, and he reached for it, flipping through my drawings with an appreciation that made my heart swell. "These are beautiful," he murmured, genuine admiration in his voice. I felt a delightful blush rise in my cheeks, a warmth spreading through me that felt like sunshine breaking through clouds after a long, dreary spell. I shared bits of my creative process, and he listened intently, nodding and offering small insights that made me feel seen and understood. The mutual quietness wrapped around us, and in those silent spaces, I could almost hear our hearts synchronizing, the gentle rhythm of two introverts finding comfort in their shared existence. As our conversation turned to the challenges of creativity, I caught his gaze, a spark of understanding passing between us. It was a moment where words were unnecessary. The air was thick with unspoken connections, and I could sense the beauty of our burgeoning friendship solidifying in that instant. I smiled softly, and he returned the gesture, a quiet acknowledgement of something meaningful forming between us. The clock struck 10, and I felt the soft weight of exhaustion settling in. Yet, neither of us seemed eager to break the spell of the evening. Instead, we continued to talk, slowly letting the night draw us deeper into our own gentle world. It was a slow drift, an unhurried dance of conversation and laughter. I could feel the warmth of connection blossoming, a quiet yet profound reminder that sometimes relationships could grow in the spaces between words. As I poured us another cup of tea, our fingers brushed again, this time lingering just a moment longer. I could sense an unspoken invitation hanging in the air, a moment that felt both thrilling and tender. Perhaps we were both a little shy, two hesitant souls, navigating the waters of connection. Yet, in that small gesture, I felt a swell of hope, an echo of possibility resonating softly within me. Eventually, as the clock marched forward, our conversation began to wind down. The stars had brightened, casting a gentle luminescence through the window, and the quiet night enveloped us in its embrace. It was clear that we both cherished this moment, the shared warmth, the lightness of being together. Yet, there was no rush to leave. Instead, we sat in a comfortable silence, each of us feeling the peace of the evening settle in our bones. Evan glanced around, his gaze landing on the sketches that adorned the walls, a dreamy smile stretching across his face. "You have a way of capturing little moments, don't you?" he said quietly. And it struck me how true that was, how each of my drawings told a fragment of a larger story, much like our evening together. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over me, a gentle reminder that life held these quiet gifts when we least expected them. As the night deepened, we exchanged soft goodbyes, knowing that this was merely the beginning of something beautiful. As I closed the door behind him, heart full and unhurried, I found myself sinking into the comfort of solitude again, reflecting on the warmth we had shared. In the stillness of my home, I allowed myself to feel gratitude for the little moments, the laughter, the shared stories. The way two introverts could weave their lives together in the simplest of ways. The soft sounds of the night wrapped around me, and I felt a deep sense of peace settle in my chest. With the kettle washed and the kitchen quiet once more, I picked up my sketchbook and flipped through the pages, allowing my thoughts to drift lazily. I could still hear Evan's laughter echoing softly, as if the universe whispered secrets of possibility and the gentle rustle of leaves outside. It had been a simple evening, yet it felt rich and profound, like a sigh of relief after a long-held breath. I let the warmth of those moments linger, savoring the sweetness of connection that now sat comfortably in my heart. I put the sketchbook down and turned off the lights, letting the soft glow of the moon filter through the curtains. I climbed into bed, pulling the soft blanket up around me, and allowed myself to sigh deeply. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a quiet contentment settle over me, the promise of new beginnings weaving through my dreams. The world felt gentle and kind, and in that stillness, I knew that sometimes the simplest connections could spark the most extraordinary stories of all. Let yourself relax as we begin the next story. The sun was just beginning to dip below the rooftops of the quiet town as I stepped into the small cafe on the corner of Maple and Elm. The air inside was warm and inviting, wrapped in the enticing aroma of freshly brewed coffee, mingling with the faint sweetness of pastries cooling on the counter. I noticed a few people scattered around, their laughter mingling softly with the clinking of ceramic cups, creating a low hum that felt comforting and familiar. I found a cozy table by the window, the soft light casting a gentle glow over the faded wood surface. The walls were lined with shelves crammed with books, their spines cracked and well-loved, echoing whispered stories of countless visitors. I could hear the gentle hiss of the espresso machine, a rhythmic heartbeat that seemed to pulse through the room, lulling everyone into a shared moment of peace. I settled into my chair, letting my shoulders relax as I glanced out the window at the golden glow of the setting sun, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and lavender. As I waited for my drink, I noticed a young woman at the counter, her hair tied back in a loose bun. She was chatting with the barista, a smile lighting up her face as she explained her day. There was something so friendly about her, an openness that felt like a warm embrace. I could feel the corners of my own mouth tugging upward in response, even though I was usually quite shy around strangers. In a moment that felt both slow and stretched, I took a sip of my coffee when it arrived, feeling the heat radiate through the porcelain into my hands. It was a little too hot, and I winced slightly as I burned my tongue, but I laughed to myself at my own impatience. The taste was rich and dark, enveloping my senses, momentarily distracting me from the world outside. There was a slight stir in the cafe, an unspoken shift in the atmosphere, as a commotion began at the door. A man had just entered, his clothes slightly rumpled and a worn-looking backpack slung over one shoulder. He seemed to hesitate for a moment, glancing around as if he were weighing his options. I could see his furrowed brow, the way he scratched the back of his neck in uncertainty. It reminded me of the countless times I had walked into a room where I felt out of place, that brief, sharp pang of vulnerability that sometimes surfaces unexpectedly. The young woman at the counter, having noticed him, offered an encouraging smile. She called out warmly, "Hey there! Come on in. We've got the best pastries today." Her voice cut through the slight tension that had gathered, bringing a lightness back to the air. The man's expression softened, and he stepped further inside, his posture relaxing just a little bit as he approached the counter. I watched as he ordered a coffee, his fingers tapping lightly against the surface while he waited. There was something about him, perhaps it was the way his eyes roamed over the shelves of books, or how he took a moment to breathe in the scent of baked goods that carried warmth through the cafe, that made him seem both a part of the scene, and yet somehow separate, as if he carried his own world with him. I couldn't help but smile as the barista handed him his drink. It felt like a small victory for the man. He beamed back, a genuine grin spreading across his face, illuminating the weariness etched around his eyes. Just then, the young woman leaned over the counter, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I saved you a chocolate croissant," she said, her voice playful. "Don't tell anyone, but it's my favorite. Here, have one on the house." No. I watched as the man's eyes widened in surprise. He stammered out a thank you, clearly taken aback by this unexpected kindness. It was a moment so pure, so gentle, that it seemed to linger in the air like the aroma of fresh coffee. The young woman simply shrugged, a soft smile gracing her lips, as if the gesture was just a small part of her day, but it was far from ordinary. Emboldened by their interaction, I felt compelled to join them in this moment. Leaving my table, I ambled over, my coffee in hand, and introduced myself with a shy smile. "I couldn't help but notice your kindness," I said, glancing between the two of them. "It's really nice to see." The young woman beamed, her eyes brightening as she replied, "It's the least I could do. Kindness has a way of bouncing back, doesn't it?" The man nodded, his coffee cup cradled in his hands as he took a sip, savoring the warmth. And just like that, a simple moment unfolded into something more. We exchanged small stories, shared laughter over the pastries, and connected in a way that felt effortless. Time seemed to slow, and outside the window the sky transformed into deeper shades of twilight, the glow of street lamps flickering to life as the day transitioned into night. As we talked, I noticed the way the man's laughter came more freely, how he seemed to shed a layer of tension, embracing the warmth of this unexpected connection. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by moments of comfortable silence as we watched as the world passed by outside. Each shared smile, each gentle exchange, each word knit a fabric of companionship that felt surprisingly intimate. I couldn't help but think of how small gestures ripple through life, how kindness is like a pebble thrown into a still pond, creating waves that can reach far beyond what we can see. I watched as the woman offered the man another croissant, and he declined, shaking his head with a chuckle. "If I don't stop now, I'll be rolling out of here," he said, a wry smile forming on his lips. Eventually, the delicious aroma of the cafe began to blend with the cool night air seeping through the open door. People began to trickle out, their conversations fading into the darkness. It felt as though the three of us had formed a small bubble of warmth, a sanctuary in the midst of a bustling world. As the cafe began to close for the night, I stood up to leave, feeling a sense of contentment that lingered in the air, like the taste of warm coffee still dancing on my tongue. The man and the woman shared a final laugh, and I felt a part of their moment, a fleeting but beautiful connection grounded in an unexpected act of kindness. I turned to leave, but not before the young woman called after me. "Hey, take care. Remember, kindness is everywhere if you look for it." I nodded, feeling a smile spread across my face, the warmth of her words wrapping around me like a soft blanket. As I stepped back out into the cool evening air, I felt a gentle breeze ruffle my hair, a quiet reminder of the beauty that can unfold even in the simplest of moments. It was in the way strangers could connect, how even a small act could turn an ordinary evening into something filled with warmth and light. A moment of calm settled within me, and I took a deep breath, feeling grateful for this unexpected night of shared kindness. With the stars beginning to twinkle overhead, I walked home, the soft sound of my footsteps mingling with the whisper of leaves rustling in the trees. The world felt manageable, the burdens of the day easing, as I thought about the connections I had made, however brief they may have been. Each gentle reminder of kindness wrapped around me like a warm hug, and I let it carry me into the stillness of the night. As I closed the door behind me, the familiar comfort of home enveloped me. The quiet settled over everything, and I felt the day lull into rest. I poured myself a small glass of water, the coolness refreshing as I took my final moments to reflect on the magic of that evening. I could still feel the laughter echoed around me, the warmth of new friendships lingering like the last rays of sunlight. With a gentle sigh, I turned off the light, letting the shadows dance softly across the walls. I found my way to bed, my heart light and content. And as I settled under the covers, I let the kindness of the evening wash over me, like a soothing balm. I closed my eyes, a soft smile on my lips, and allowed the tranquility of the night to cradle me into peaceful sleep, the world outside fading away into a gentle hush. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. The evening had settled softly over our little town, the kind of twilight that wrapped itself around you like a worn quilt. I remember my porch swing creaking gently as I leaned back, feeling the cool breeze brush across my skin, carrying with it the sweet scent of blooming honeysuckle from the garden. The sky was painted in delicate shades of lavender and dusky pink, with stars peeking shyly through the fading light. I could hear the distant hum of crickets beginning their nightly chorus, a harmonious backdrop that filled the air with tranquil music. The painted wood of the swing felt smooth under my fingers, and I watched as the sun dipped lower, its warmth lingering like a soft hug. The sound of laughter floated from the backyard next door, where the Johnsons were hosting their usual Friday evening cookout. The smells of grilled burgers and sizzling vegetables wafted over the fence, teasing my senses and drawing me into a pleasant reverie. My neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, always infused her gatherings with warmth and joy, a gentle chaos of kids playing tag and adults finding good-natured reason to tease one another. As I swayed back and forth, sipping on a glass of iced tea, I couldn't help but smile at the scene, a perfect picture of community. Our little street was a tapestry of life, a mix of familiar faces, occasional newcomers, and the comforting rhythm of everyday encounters. There was Mr. Noyne Thompson across the street, a retired teacher who would often share tales of days gone by over the fence, and Clara, who had an uncanny ability to bake the fluffiest cakes imaginable, always with a warm smile and a plate offered to anyone who happened to pass by. But even in this idyllic setting, there were whispers of something stirring beneath the surface. I remembered the recent storms that had swept through our area, sudden, fierce, but fleeting in their time here. The aftermath had left a few homes with minor damages, and the Johnsons' fence had taken a hit, leaning precariously to one side. But that Friday evening, laughter still flowed, and I felt buoyed by the sense of community that unfurled around me like the petals of a flower. As I swung gently, I noticed Mr. Johnson peering over the fence, an easy grin on his face, his glasses slipping down his nose as he waved. "Hey, there." I've got enough burgers to feed an army. Want to join us?" His voice carried warmth, much like the fading sun. "Thanks, Bill," I called back, "but I think I'll just enjoy the breeze for a while. You have a good crowd tonight." "Nilzani." "Ah, it's just us usuals, but we wouldn't have it any other way." He chuckled, turning back to attend to whatever culinary magic was happening on the grill. I could see Clara gesturing animatedly, her laugh ringing out like the chime of a bell, filling the air with lightness. As I settled into the comforting rhythm of the swing, I thought about the way we all rallied together when the storms hit. It really brought us closer. Just 2 weeks ago, when the rains had poured down relentlessly, I had ventured out with a flashlight to check on Mrs. Johnson's garden. I remember the sight of her, bundled up in a large sweater with her hair tied back in a fraying bun, staring at her drooping sunflowers with a frown that melted into laughter as I approached. Flashlight in one hand and a bag of home-a-day cookies in the other. "What would I do without you?" she had teased, her eyes twinkling despite her worries. It was a simple gesture, but I could see how the little community we built around us rallied in small but meaningful ways during those stormy days. We shared tips on how to fix minor leaks, held impromptu meetings at the local diner, and even organized a cleanup day, laughing as we struggled to lift fallen branches and debris. I took a sip of my tea, letting the cool liquid soothe me, and my thoughts drifted back to the present. The laughter next door had grown louder, a melodic blend of voices, and I could hear the clinking of glasses raising in a toast. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the air, a sound that made me sit up straighter. I had turned to see the fence between our properties suddenly give way, the wood splintering slightly as it succumbed to its recent strain. Gasps filled the air, followed by laughter, and I found myself chuckling softly. "Well, that was dramatic," I said to no one, feeling a warmth bloom in my chest. It seemed fitting that the fence would finally bow out in such a theatrical manner, a symbol of the togetherness that had already formed. Moments later, Bill was running over, his laughter like a buoyant note in the evening air. "I guess that's the last straw for the old fence," he said, shaking his head, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Looks like we'll be needing a new one, huh?" Suddenly, the idea of a new fence felt like an adventure, a call to gather the community once more. It was then that I caught Clara's eye. She was already nodding, a soft smile on her face, and we both exchanged an unspoken agreement. We could turn this into a gathering, a community project where we could share stories and, of course, some of her famous cakes. The air buzzed with a shared excitement. Ideas began flowing. We could paint the new fence together, maybe even gather and plant some flowers along the base. The laughter continued as we reminisced about previous summer projects, each moment a thread weaving us closer. Even as the sun began to dip below the horizon, the lights around the backyard flickered on, casting a gentle glow that felt like a soft embrace. As the evening deepened into night, I felt the warmth of connection envelop me. It was comforting to know we would come together, not just as neighbors but as friends, to mend what had been broken and to create something new. Soon, it didn't matter that the fence had fallen. Instead, it sparked determination, laughter, and togetherness. A reminder of how resilient we could be when we faced challenges as a community. Gradually, the laughter quieted down, and I could hear the soft rustle of the trees as the night deepened. I had never realized how comforting it could be. The shared moments, the laughter, the collective spirit of support during both calm and chaotic times. The air turned cool, and I found myself feeling drowsy, the gentle sway of the porch swing lulling me into a peaceful state. Somehow, in the shared quietude of that evening, I felt a sense of belonging wash over me, as if the universe had aligned just right to create this perfect tapestry of community. Soft laughter lingered in the air, gently echoing as I slowly closed my eyes, the world around me fading into a warm lullaby of shared moments. As I drifted off, I envisioned the future days ahead, where we would gather and plan, the sound of laughter enveloping us like the softest blanket. The world felt manageable, and there was something beautiful about knowing we could always count on one another, no matter what life threw our way. And as a soft sigh escaped my lips, the distant sound of crickets serenaded me into a gentle sleep, wrapped in the comfort of home, warmth, and community. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. I remember a gentle afternoon in late spring, the kind that seems to hang in the air like a soft melody, just warm enough to coax the blossoms from their buds. I found myself in the kitchen of my little apartment, where the sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes that danced lazily in the golden light. The air was filled with the comforting scent of freshly baked bread, wafting from the oven, mingling with the sharp yet sweet aroma of the just brewed coffee that was still bubbling softly in my old, trusty percolator. Outside, the world seemed to hum along at an easy pace. I could hear the distant sound of children playing in the park across the street, their laughter twinkling like wind chimes in the gentle breeze. It was a perfect day for a little bit of quiet reflection and perhaps a bit of indulgence. I leaned against the counter, cradling a warm mug in my hands, relishing the cozy warmth it imparted to my palms. As I sat there, I thought about my friend Jamie, who had mentioned they were stopping by for coffee that afternoon. We had a little ritual of sorts, a catch-up over coffee whenever time allowed. There was something lovely about our conversations, like peeling away the layers of life until we reached the core of what mattered. The clock ticked softly in the background, and I took a moment to enjoy the stillness of my little sanctuary. I could hear the gentle rustle of the wind through the leaves outside, and the way it seemed to whisper secrets to the earth. Just then, the doorbell rang, interrupting the tranquil harmony of the afternoon. I set my mug down and padded over to the door, my heart quickening slightly in anticipation. As I opened the door, Jamie stood there, a big grin spread across their face, and a large umbrella balanced awkwardly under one arm. "Hey there," they chirped, their enthusiasm bubbling over like a fizzy drink. "I hope you're ready for a little adventure." I blinked and took a small step back, registered the clouds swirling darkly overhead. "Adventure?" I asked, half laughing. "We're not going to go on an unexpected quest for more coffee, are we?" "No, not quite," Jamie chuckled, stepping inside and shaking off the droplets that had collected on the umbrella. "But the weather took a turn, and I thought it would be nice to walk down to that little flower shop. They had those rare blue hydrangeas last week, remember? I thought we could get a few." "No." I paused, still a bit confused. "Hydrangeas. Aren't we just having coffee?" "Nadiyuan." Jamie waved a hand dismissively, mischief twinkling in their eyes. "Come on. It'll be fun. A quick jaunt, some flowers, and we can return here and enjoy coffee with freshly cut blooms." "None. I could not help but smile at their enthusiasm, taking a moment to appreciate just how much I loved these spontaneous ideas. "All right, you win. A little adventure it is," I conceded, grabbing my light jacket from the hook by the door. As we stepped back out into the world, the clouds hung low, wrapping the sky in a muted gray blanket. But the rain was light. Nothing more than a drizzle, really. It felt refreshing against my skin, invigorating even. We walked side by side, our laughter punctuating the rhythmic patter of raindrops on the umbrella. "I have to admit, I was a bit baffled by the umbrella," I said as we strolled. "Did you really think it would rain?" Jamie chuckled. "I always come prepared. You never know when life might throw a few raindrops your way." "Nay." The flower shop, a cozy nook tucked between a bakery and a small bookstore, stood invitingly at the end of the street. As we walked in, the smell of fresh greenery enveloped us, a blend of earthy soils and the subtly sweet scents of hundreds of flowers. A bell tinkled softly above the door, and I felt a sense of calm settle over me. We wandered through the aisles, taking our time admiring the colors and shapes. The vibrant yellows of tulips caught my attention, and the dusky purples of lilacs made Jamie stop in their tracks. We were immersed in this little world of nature's palette, losing track of time as we pulled petals and leaves into our conversation. After a few moments, Jamie spotted the blue hydrangeas in a corner, their beautiful, delicate blooms beckoning us like little treasures. "There they are," Jamie exclaimed, eyes shining with delight. I nodded, admiring the blossoms that seemed almost ethereal. "They are stunning, aren't they?" As we approached, I noticed the price tag and felt a sudden prickle of concern. Um, Jamie," I said quietly, hesitating. What if we just take a picture of them instead? They look so pretty. I'm sure we could find something similar at the market for less." "Nay. Take a picture? Why would we do that?" Jamie replied, tilting their head and furrowing their brow in confusion. I took a breath, glancing down at my shoes. "Well," I started, trying to be lighthearted. "I just thought it'd be a more budget-friendly option. You know, just in case these are, more than we typically spend." "Now, or—" After a moment of silence, Jamie let out a soft laugh that seemed to fill the small shop. "I was ready to buy them, you know. I planned on surprising you. You deserve these beauties. You always brighten everyone's day." "No, oh." Heat crept into my cheeks as I realized the misunderstanding. "Oh, I thought you meant we could just admire them and not buy," I said with a chuckle of my own, the tension melting away like the raindrops on the umbrella. Jamie's face softened, and they reached out to squeeze my arm gently. "Let's get them, okay? I really want you to have these. Sometimes a little splash of color can brighten up more than just our space." "You know." Embarrassment floated away in the warmth of their kindness, and soon I found myself smiling wide again. "All right," I said, nodding. "Let's get the hydrangeas then." With that, it felt like the sun broke through the clouds, if only for a moment, illuminating our small world more than the drizzles of rain ever could. We chose the loveliest blooms, delicate shades of blue, and as the shopkeeper wrapped them carefully, I felt a lightness of spirit I hadn't anticipated. As we made our way back to my apartment, the rain had started to ease, and a soft glow began to emerge behind the clouds. Jamie and I chatted easily, the earlier misunderstanding transforming into laughter, our dialogue flowing like the gentle breeze that followed us home. Back in the kitchen, with the comforting smell of freshly brewed coffee still lingering, we arranged the hydrangeas in a simple glass vase. They stood proudly on the windowsill, catching the slanting rays of light filtering through the glass. We settled into the inviting glow of the afternoon, the clouds beginning to part slightly, revealing patches of blue sky. I poured us each a warm cup of coffee, the steam curling playfully in the air. As we laughed over our whimsical adventure, warmth wrapped around us like a cozy blanket, filling the space with warmth and connection. Eventually, we both grew quiet, sipping our coffee in a comfortable silence. I glanced over at Jamie, who was now admiring the hydrangeas, a contented smile playing on their lips. "Thanks for today," I said softly, the gratitude filling my voice. "I really needed this." "Anytime," Jamie replied, their own gaze drifting towards the flowers. "You know, it's funny how a little misunderstanding could lead to something so lovely." I chuckled, recalling the moment when I had nearly suggested a photograph instead of the real thing. Who knew we'd go from pictures to petals? As Jamie leaned back in their chair, the sun's gentle rays illuminated the room, casting warm patterns on the walls. It felt like everything had come full circle. The earlier clouds, the brief misunderstanding, all resolved into this serene moment, wrapped in laughter and friendship. And as the light continued to shift and change, I could feel my eyelids growing heavy, the warmth of the day wrapping around me like a soft, familiar blanket. I noticed the quiet now, the rhythmic ticking of the clock, and the gentle hum of life outside the window, a serene backdrop to this perfect afternoon. In that stillness, my heart swelled with gratitude for the little moments, the small connections, and the unexpected adventures that life often brought. I was enveloped in a sense of peacefulness, feeling comfortably anchored amid the gentle tide of time. In the tender embrace of that cozy kitchen, I allowed the warmth of the moment to settle in, breathing deep and slow, finding my way into the quiet depths of slumber, knowing that everything felt just right in this gentle, radiant world. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. I remember one early autumn morning, the kind where the air feels crisp and alive, as if the world was waking up from a long slumber. The light streamed through the window of my small kitchen, casting soft patterns across the worn wooden table where I often sat to sip my coffee. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the room, rich and inviting, mingling with the slightly damp scent of fallen leaves wafting in from the open window. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves rustling against each other, creating a soft, whispering symphony that was both calming and exhilarating. I enjoyed mornings like this, where the world felt like it was at peace, a gentle pause before the day unfolded its routine. I took a deep breath, savoring the warmth of my coffee cup between my hands, as the steam curled upward and disappeared into the already brightening air. As I sat there, I felt a tender ache of gratitude for the simple things. The faint sound of a neighbor's dog barking in the distance, the soft thump of pigeons landing awkwardly on the fire escape outside my window, and the way the sunlight danced with dust motes in the room. It was a cozy corner of my world, and I knew I would carry this warmth with me throughout the day. The job I held at the small marketing firm just a few blocks away had become my little sanctuary, despite its usual chaos. My coworkers were a blend of earnest souls, all trying to navigate the daily ebb and flow of client demands, deadlines, and team projects. There was something endearing about the quirks we all carried. The way Daniel's laughter echoed down the hall, Julie's penchant for bringing in donuts every Friday. Those soft, sugary circles that somehow made even the toughest feedback sessions feel lighter. But amidst this cozy camaraderie, there was also Jack, our manager, who still seemed to carry an air of superiority, despite only being a few years older than the rest of us. Jack had a sharp tongue and a propensity for creating a competitive atmosphere, often undercutting our ideas in meetings. I think he believed it motivated us, but it mostly felt like an uphill climb, with us facing a cold wind at our backs. That day, as I walked the familiar path to the office, the scent of wet pavement mingling with the faint remnants of summer blooms in the air, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Perhaps it was the way Jack had dismissed my suggestion in our team meeting the previous week, his words sharp and stinging, though I tried to brush it off. "Let's be practical," he had said, cutting me off before I could finish. "That won't work for our clients." I could still feel the unkindness of his tone, the way it hung in the air like a reluctant summer thundercloud. As I settled into my desk, the gentle hum of our open office enveloped me, my coworkers bustling about as they prepared for the day. I could hear Julie joking with Daniel about his terrible taste in coffee, how he insisted on drinking only the strongest blend, as if to fuel his incessant need for productivity. But when lunch approached, I noticed something unusual. Jack called a sudden meeting. The air felt tense as we gathered around the conference table, the smell of yesterday's takeout lingering in the air. He launched into a tirade about our recent campaign, critiquing the team's performance, and I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. Daniel, who usually kept his thoughts to himself, bravely spoke up. "We thought the concept resonated well with focus groups," he said softly, hesitantly glancing toward the floor while voicing a concern. Jack waved a dismissive hand, his expression darkening, as if offended by our attempts to reason with him. The meeting meandered on, but I could see the frustration on my coworkers' faces, the way their shoulders sagged under the weight of Jack's words. As they shared barely concealed glances, I felt a stirring within me, a flicker of courage sparking in my chest. After the meeting, I walked over to Daniel, Julie, and a few others who were lingering by the coffee machine. "I think we need to do something," I found myself saying. "We can't just sit back and let him tear us apart like this." They nodded, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to intrigue. And before I knew it, we began to formulate a plan. It wasn't about revenge or undermining Jack. No, that wasn't the kind of justice we sought. We wanted to remind him that we were a team, that we had value, and that our ideas deserved respect. Over the next few weeks, we worked quietly, gathering data, refining our campaign ideas, and finding evidence that supported our perspectives. We met during lunch, sharing snacks while brainstorming how to present our case. Each laughter-filled moment, each small victory as we nudged our ideas forward, felt like a step towards reclaiming our narrative. Finally, the day arrived when we felt ready to confront Jack. We had prepared a presentation that showcased not just the work we had done, but highlighted the contributions from each team member, creating a sense of unity we hoped would draw him in. As we gathered in the conference room, the air was electric with nervous anticipation. Jack walked in, his demeanor casual, but I could sense an underlying tension. We presented our campaign, each of us speaking with a quiet confidence that had been nurtured by our newfound solidarity. I could see Jack's expression shift as he listened. He was still frowning, his brow knitted in thought, but I could also see the flicker of realization in his eyes, the way he began to understand the depth of our work and the passion that fueled it. When we finished, the room fell into a still silence, and I could feel the weight of our collective hope hanging in the air. Jack for a moment said nothing, his fingers drumming on the tabletop as he contemplated. I exchanged brief glances with my teammates, an unspoken promise of support lingering between us. Finally, Jack exhaled, his shoulders relaxing, and he looked at us with a slight smile that felt both surprising and reassuring. "You all have put a lot of effort into this, and I can see that now," he admitted. "I can be a tough critic, but maybe I need to listen more." There was a warmth that blossomed in the room, a collective sigh of relief mingling with the bright autumn light pouring through the windows. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just about the campaign, but about the quiet strength we had found together. A shared sense of empowerment that allowed us to navigate the storm more effectively than any one of us could have alone. As the weeks turned into months, I found that Jack's approach softened. He became more open to discussions and acknowledged our contributions more often, and I felt grateful for the shift. Our team thrived, and those Friday donut gatherings became even more meaningful, filled with laughter and lightness. I often think back to those days, especially during the quiet mornings when I sip my coffee, bathed in the golden warmth of sunlight. It's a tender memory, one that reminds me of the strength woven within community and connection. The kind that can change workplace dynamics, but more importantly, the kind that can shift the atmosphere of a room. And so, as I lay down at night, the world quieting around me, I smile at the simplicity of it all. The gentle rustle of leaves outside my window echoes softly in my ears, like a lullaby coaxing me into a restful sleep. The darkening evening cradles me in its embrace, and I feel a deep sense of contentment, knowing that tomorrow holds the promise of a new adventure, perhaps in the company of friends, laughter lingering in the air, warmth wrapping around us. Like a cozy blanket, the gentle whisper of silence comes closer, and soon I drift away, cradled by the memories of a gentle morning, a team united, and infinite possibilities unfurling in the soft embrace of a peaceful night. Here's another story to drift off to. The thick, fragrant aroma of cinnamon and brown sugar curled through the air, wrapping around me like a soft blanket. It was a cool autumn morning in my small kitchen, where the golden sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting gentle patterns on the countertops. I could hear the soft rustle of leaves outside, shaken loose by a playful breeze, their crisp sound lending a sense of quiet cheer to the day. As I stood by the window, stirring the contents of a pot simmering on the stove, the golden warmth of the morning enveloped me. I glanced around at the familiar sight of my cozy kitchen, an old wooden table slightly chipped at the edges from years of gatherings and lazy Sunday breakfasts. The fridge hummed softly, and a few dishes were stacked neatly in the sink, remnants of last night's quiet dinner. It was a morning that invited warmth, simplicity, and reflection. I had invited Sarah, my old friend, over for breakfast. We hadn't seen each other in what felt like ages. Life had a way of weaving us through different paths, pulling us toward new experiences, and while I often thought of her, I hadn't reached out in a while. A mild sense of anxiety fluttered in my stomach as I rolled out 2 pieces of dough for cinnamon rolls, wondering if the distance between us would feel too heavy, if the laughter would come easily like it once had. The sound of the doorbell rang through the house, bringing me back to the moment. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, catching a breath of the sweet scent of dough, and opened the door to find Sarah standing there, her smile bright and warm, with a hint of surprise in her eyes. She wore a simple green sweater that, in the light, made her look like the embodiment of autumn herself. "Hey, it smells amazing in here," she exclaimed, stepping inside with her usual exuberance. "Just something simple," I replied, a grin playing at the corners of my mouth. "Cinnamon rolls and coffee. You know me, nothing too fancy." No. "I'm not picky. I'll take whatever you've got," she laughed, her voice like a comforting melody, filling the corners of the kitchen. She plopped down onto a chair at the table, smoothing her hair back behind her ears, which reminded me of those endless afternoons we'd spent there, dissecting our lives and dreaming about the future. As we shared stories over the warm, sticky rolls, the cheerful clinks of forks on plates blended with our laughter. We talked about everything and nothing. Coffee spilled over on the table, and we both chuckled about how we never really had our lives together. I noticed her eyes sparkle as she talked about her new job, the excitement thrumming through her words, the way they danced in the air as they twinkled in the sunlight. But somewhere, beneath her enthusiasm, I sensed a curtain of uncertainty. As she spoke about her plans, there was an edge of something unspoken, an anxious flicker behind her words that made my heart tighten. In moments of quiet between our conversations, I watched her fingers fidget with a loose thread on the sleeve of her sweater, and I felt the gentle pull of my own worries rising like the steam from our cups, settling between us. "So, how has everything been going with you?" she asked, her gaze softening as she took a sip of coffee. I paused, considering how to reply, aware of the delicate balance between lightheartedness and the weight of unshared truths. "It's been good, mostly. You know how it is. Just the usual routine." "I get that," she replied, but her gaze lingered as if inviting me to go deeper. I took a breath, feeling the gravity of our conversation shift. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about letting go lately. Of expectations. It's a tricky dance, isn't it? Trying to keep everything together and—" "Flipping the script?" she interjected, her brow furrowed slightly in something like worry. "Yeah," I sighed. "I think it's about finding peace in what is, rather than what could have been." We were quiet for a moment. Each heartbeat seemed to stretch in the calm that enveloped us. Sarah finally spoke, her voice softer now. "It's bittersweet when you look back, isn't it? The things we thought were forever. Man, well, As she spoke, a memory flickered in my mind, an old scrapbook of moments we had cherished together, laughter tearing through the air like the autumn wind. The time we had huddled under a blanket during a thunderstorm, her telling ghost stories that made us giggle and jump at shadow. Or that summer road trip where we got lost, only to find ourselves at a small cafe with the best blueberry pancakes we'd ever tasted. Each memory felt like a comforting touch, yet also a reminder of the passage of time, of us growing and shifting. "Yeah," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It feels like we've been all the way around the sun, and sometimes I wonder if we're still us, you know." And then her eyes glistened with understanding. "It's kind of like those cinnamon rolls. They rise and fall, and sometimes we have to peel back the layers to get to the gooey sweetness in the center." Nania. We shared a soft laugh, and in that moment, a wave of relief washed over me. The kitchen was filled with warm light, the air carrying the scent of sugar and spice. Somewhere in that gentle exchange, I started to feel the loosening of my own worries, recognizing that letting go didn't mean losing everything. In the quiet that followed, I decided to savor this time. Every sound felt more pronounced. The ticking of the clock on the wall, the distant sound of children playing outside, our soft laughter echoing in the afternoon light. Time slowed, allowing me to sink further into the comfort of the moment. Sarah leaned back in her chair, letting out a relaxed sigh. You know, it's funny. I've been thinking about moving away for a while now. It's just, I don't know if I'm ready to make that leap. Her voice trailed off, and I could see the hesitation etched on her face, a mirror to my own thoughts. Change is intimidating, I acknowledged, gently nudging a few crumbs on the table away as I considered my words. But sometimes the hardest part is realizing that we can still keep those connections, no matter where we are. Right, she smiled softly, the concern easing in her eyes. We can always choose to hold on to the memories, even if the landscape shifts around us. As I looked at her, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. In that cozy kitchen, we were both in a transition, grappling with the delicate dance of letting go while holding on. It felt reassuring, connecting us even in our uncertainty. The cinnamon rolls were long gone by the time we started reminiscing, and as Sarah began to share her own plans for the next stage of her life, I realized that change didn't mean losing the laughter or the warmth between us. Gradually, our conversation faded into comfortable silences, a symphony of unspoken understanding that drifted like the golden sunlight through the window. I watched the shadows dance slowly across the table, feeling my eyelids grow heavy, the warmth of the moment wrapping around me like a cozy blanket. There was a sense of ease in the air. Our worries were still there but didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. The world outside continued its gentle rhythm, and in that small kitchen filled with familiarity, we floated in the gentle embrace of friendship and acceptance. As the afternoon passed into a quiet dusk, I finally understood that letting go meant opening to the beauty of new beginnings, an invitation to explore, to laugh, to nourish connections, even as the seasons turned. With every breath, I felt lighter, as if I might float away like a delicate leaf caught in a soft breeze. The last rays of sunlight slipped through the window, illuminating Sarah's face with a warm glow, and I was filled with a calm assurance that everything would be all right. And as the moment settled around us, I let out a contented sigh, knowing that our paths, while shifting, could still cross in the most beautiful of ways, and that I would carry the warmth of this afternoon with me wherever I went. At the end of it all, I felt grateful. Grateful for the memories we shared, for the laughter that flowed freely, and for the quiet understanding that lingered in the spaces between our words. The kitchen was still, the air sweet, and I could feel the gentle tug of sleep weaving around me, settling in like a soft whisper, nudging me toward rest. And in that cocoon of comfort, I knew that all was well. Close your eyes and settle in for this one. Close your eyes and settle in for this one. And that's the last story for tonight. You've traveled a long way to get here. Through 12 quiet worlds, 12 small lives, 12 gentle resolutions. Your breathing is slower now. Your body is heavy and warm. There's nothing left to think about. Just the quiet. Just the dark. Just rest. Good night.